It's the weekly podcast where we talk football kits, and we have been discussing the World Cup all through the last 6 weeks, 7 weeks, even longer than that because we had a couple episodes beforehand. And we have reached the end of the World Cup. I am Matt Dick. I'm joined by Phil Delves as ever, and we're going to be discussing on tonight's show the final, the bronze medal match, and some of the kits that we enjoyed seeing, some of the kits that we missed, and some that we maybe changed our mind about. Phil, great to see you again. How you doing?
Very well, thank you, Matt. It's I'm missing the World Cup. You know, we had quite a few weeks of it with the expanded tournament in terms of number of teams, and yet it still doesn't feel enough. I mean, you know, now it's gone, now it's over. I miss having the games to look forward to, and if anything, I feel like I'm almost ready to jump on the 64-team bandwagon, which I didn't think I'd be saying going into the tournament. And I feel it's wrong to say, but I kind of, if it means we get more games, I feel like, it's perhaps a silly take, but I want more.
It's crazy, isn't it? We had so many games, which was great. So many weeks of football, but yet we're still left desiring. That sort of week in the run-up to the final, we have 4 games, if you include the bronze medal game or the third place game. We have 4 games in a week. You're desiring more, but I'm not quite on that bandwagon yet, because I think, if I'm right, 3 teams from Europe be the increase. So Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales, Ireland, Denmark, Italy is still tricky to get in Europe, which is kind of crazy. You would think there'll be more from Europe would make it a bit of. It'd probably make it a better competition, I think, if more from Europe got in, rather than, I think I saw an article that said it would be like New Caledonia would get in if they're based on the rankings from, I think Oceania will get another 3. So maybe not on the bandwagon yet, but I'm sure that'll rumble round until 2030. That's when they're talking about bringing it in, isn't it? So kind of crazy. We're a couple of days away from the final. We've been able to reflect on it. There's been a lot of coverage about what happened in the final. What was your thoughts on what happened on Sunday night?
Yeah, I think going into the game, there was a lot of talk off the pitch about particularly Argentina and, you know, the Falklands banner and all these things. And it's been a theme, hasn't it? We talked about this last time. Some of the kind of off the pitch stuff, which has kind of made the World Cup simultaneously quite head scratching and frustrating, but also quite memorable. And I think in some ways the controversy has kind of, I think, played a part in making this quite a memorable World Cup. So we had a bit of that going in. And I think, you know, Argentina, they played the role of pantomime villain excellently. You know, they obviously, they had a bit of an edge to them, like they have had all tournament, really. But it did boil over once or twice. We obviously had the Enzo Fernandez red card, and obviously there was all the stuff post-match and what have you. But in terms of the game itself, I think, you know, it had its moments. It was I would say still quite an entertaining watch, despite being largely being goalless for most of the game. And obviously Argentina didn't have a shot till 115 minutes, which is incredible. But a few people compared it to kind of 2014, even 2010. So, you know, finals where they were 0-0 for much of the game, and then you had a late winner. So we had that again. So I think it was a bit like that. And obviously Argentina were involved on the wrong side of 2014. Spain won it. So there was a bit of a connection there, which I quite liked. But a great goal to win it. You know, really, really well with a team goal. And I think for Spain, you know, they're a really likeable team. The fact that they don't really have any egos, even Lamine Yamal, you know, the star player, if you like, he was, you know, kind of, he wasn't, you know, sort of dominating conversation. He felt very much played, you know, for the team and what have you. So yeah, I you know, was happy to see Spain win. I think, like a lot of people, and I think it capped off the tournament all in all pretty well.
Yeah, I think, if I remember correctly, I saw a stat, it's like 6 of the last 7 World Cup finals have gone to extra time, which kind of makes sense because they're always cagey affairs, aren't they? But I really like how that Spain team have moved through the age grades together with the manager. He's been in charge of the youth teams, so they've really come through together, and they've really got something great going on, and the women's team as well is fantastic. So Spanish football is really in the ascendancy once again, which is great to see. I do think though the shenanigans of Argentina do sort of detract from the final. As it stands, as we record, FIFA haven't said anything about what's going to happen. They've sort of dismissed the Falklands banner from the semi-final. It'd be really interesting to see if anything happens with Fernandez's red card. I think they've already rescinded Paredes' red card, which, if that's true, is kind of crazy, because that the whole shenanigans at the end was really unsavoury. But in the semi-final, in the final, their tactics were to disrupt, to annoy, but the chirping at the referee, the getting in the way of the celebrations almost, they're sort of unsavoury. I was saying to one of my colleagues, I'd really love Argentina to be punished for it. Like if they got kicked out the next World Cup for all the chirping around the referee and for the dissent, that would be great. And then you realise that's not going to happen because they're the hosts or one of the 6 hosts for the next one, so that's not going to happen. So it'll be really interesting to see what FIFA do as a sort of a punishment, if there is a punishment as well, which I think there needs to be. One thing I want to get your thoughts on, Phil, is because I know you're a big NFL fan. Obviously, this was the American World Cup. I saw a story last week that the winners were going to get rings like the NFL winners get and the NBA winners get. Saw that, and it's get a FIFA boss. There's going to be 26 rings, probably 30 for some of the management staff as well. I thought this is ridiculous. Nobody in football is crying out for that. What's your thoughts on the over Americanization of football?
Well, I think there's a couple of levels or parts to the story. On one hand, you've got the rings themselves, which I wouldn't personally think was, kind of necessary. It feels a bit odd, because obviously whilst it is, America obviously hosted the final, they're obviously one of the 3 hosts, and it is an inherently American thing. So it feels odd to have that aspect, given that Canada and Mexico were co-hosts.
Yep.
So that's jarring, and I think ultimately they are a bit, they're a bit for all the kind of novelty factor, I guess you could say, kind of again like you mentioned the NFL, it feels a bit forced. Although I did see stories that I think in there was at least a couple of recent World Cups where individual squad members had got rings made for the team and stuff, which is interesting. So perhaps the players are kind of on board, but on the part for me which is almost more pertinent is that FIFA are also going to be releasing, I believe it's 2,000 odd rings to the public, which will be available to buy, and that to me is like, it's so odd because obviously they'll charge a decent figure, but it's assuming they're the same rings as the ones the players will get. That just seems, well, firstly, I hope that isn't the case, because that would just be. That would just completely kind of make a mockery of them at all. But if they are even similar, it just seems ridiculous, because obviously they're just cashing in. They've been cashing in all tournament. Yeah. But that aspect to me is just even by FIFA. I mean, we shouldn't be surprised, should we? FIFA standards. That really surprised me that they're selling them effectively. That's true. It's a great aspect to pick out, that not the best look, is it really? If you're going to do it, just make sure it's unique and specific to the players. We don't need a player's version and a fan version like we've seen with a lot of the kits. we just true.
Now, last time we spoke in a little additional segment for one of our podcasts was about England and Mexico. England featured in the semi-final. They won the third place playoff, so it was their best finish to a World Cup since '66, coming in third place. Let's quickly touch on that match. Finished 6-4 to England. My wife said to me when I told her, she was like, why could they not have played like that against Argentina? And I was kind of like, well, possibly because France let them play football. They didn't foul them every time England picked up the ball, and they didn't sit back as well. What's your thoughts on it as an England fan?
Yeah, I think your sentiments are very were shared amongst many people. There were a number of things. One, how come Saka goes from playing 0 minutes in the semi-final
Mm-hmm.
to then playing the whole game and obviously looked amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And the team just again that there was the way they just seemed to be enjoying their football was a lot of fun. I think you're right. Obviously, there was very much an aspect that France, for whatever reason, didn't turn up to play, which is odd because they had a strong team. They had Magnon in goal and a strong lineup with almost a full strength lineup. But I think it was very clear, both from interviews that have come out since, and obviously the way the game changed at half time. France obviously, got their act together, made it quite interesting in the end.
Mm.
But it was a lot of fun. I didn't sadly I didn't watch this one live, and I think like a lot of people, I just thought, oh, I'll just watch the highlights, and I wish I had watched it live because it looked, again, just the way that just seeing the players, just it felt like, yeah, like they were just kind of, in the backyard, so to speak, or in a training session over, like just again, just really positive. And I loved even, probably my favorite goal. There were lots of good goals, but I loved Jude Bellingham's goal at the end. The
Mm.
way that he was like, that run that he made and the finish and the celebration. Obviously, it had, from a kind of record perspective, he overtook Lineker, so that was quite significant. Lineker's record for goals at a tournament. And I just love that. I love seeing like, that kind of that moment in a game which was effectively meaningless. But and probably the only other thing to say was poor old Michael Elise missed multiple
Yeah.
incredible chances, and he had an amazing tournament. He was one of the players of the tournament. Obviously, topped the assist list. But boy, did he miss some good chances, and apparently he was in tears after the game. And
Ah.
obviously there was all jokes about him being a double agent given his English connection. But yeah, just a lot of fun, and it changed the mood. It's not to say there aren't still questions. I personally think Thomas Tuchel has more than earned another tournament, but ultimately I think people are looking to things like the Nations League now. Again, a largely disregarded format or competition, but I believe we play Spain next, and that's ultimately these are games that are gonna help set the tone. Like if and again, it'll be hard to beat Spain. They're unbeaten in nearly 40 games, but I'm yeah, I'm hoping we at the very least give more of a good account of ourselves. But a lot of fun. Honestly, just having that kind of game was just a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. And as my brother sent me a thing that only three teams finished with a win at the World Cup, and they were Spain, England, and Turkey. They were the three teams that finished their World Cup with a victory. So there's that sort of thin sliver of optimism to end the tournament with, I suppose. But yeah, I suppose it always helps finishing with a win. But it will be interesting to see what they do. I feel the conversation about Thomas Tuchel's future will continue for a while. But that
Yeah.
game against Spain could be really important to see. It's the what could have been game, I suppose, isn't it? So
Mm.
that should be great. Let's move on to talk about kits. Now, we did quite a significant rundown of our favourite kits. The ones we didn't enjoy so much, they are still available to watch on YouTube and to listen as podcasts. Do check them out if you've missed any of them. But I thought we would run down some of the kits that we discussed, some that we really enjoyed seeing, and also, Phil, we'll start with ones that we missed actually seeing on the field. There was quite a few that when we discussed, we weren't sure if they're going to be played in or not, and then it wasn't long after we recorded that the lists came out of who be wearing what, and there was some that we saw went, we're not going to see these ones. Was there any in particular that you go, I wish we'd actually not in the field?
Yeah, I think of that list, there's a few standouts which I would think most, if not everyone, has most people, if not everyone, is included, and that starts with Curaçao's Away,
Mm.
which had a lot of buzz. And it ultimately, for such a simple design, it really did work. We talked about this obviously, but it would have been great to have seen that. And they had a great tournament. They had a really they acquitted themselves really well. So it would have been lovely to have seen that kit, just to kind of help solidify, I think, the memories of them at the World Cup. But ultimately, that one was a miss. And another popular one, which I would agree with, is the South Africa away. Again, a lot of buzz about that one. Another Adidas kit, and it was quite a notable Adidas kit. It sort of had a very strong identity, and it did something which most other kits didn't do, I think, in terms of the way it looked. So that was a big one. I was quite fond of the Netherlands away as well, the Dutch one.
Yeah.
They're kind of a bit of a sleeper kit, which didn't end up being worn. So that was another one I liked, which I would have liked to have seen, but wasn't there. And there was a few others, but yeah, those three I think were the ones that stood out for me.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Just going back through our rundowns, Curacao was top for both of us, wasn't it? South Africa was high. So definitely those two were two misses. I think one we ones we did see that we didn't see enough of, in my opinion, were probably Japan away kit. I would love to have seen that
Hmm.
more. And the Scotland
Hmm.
away kit. Obviously
Yep.
Scotland's going out in the group stage. Just seen it once, but I feel as if that we saw enough of it around Boston in the stands, and I've seen enough of them back home that it's sort of made up for it. It's definitely, when we discussed it, we weren't sure if it was going to be popular or not. I think it's definitely been a big hit, that Scotland kit. So I've seen a lot of it, which is absolutely fantastic. So, but no, I'd have to agree. The two that I would have loved to see on the field, actually see what the combination would be like with the shorts and everything put together,
Mm.
was Curacao and South Africa. So I definitely agree with you. Is there any that you're like, having seen it on the pitch, I'm so glad that I was a big fan of this one because it looks as good as I thought it would do on the pitch.
I mean, you mentioned Japan. We only got it one game, but I really did think that looked good. That was a standout, for sure for me. And similarly, we didn't get it a lot, but I really liked France's away shirt when we saw that on the
Mm.
pitch. I think they obviously, I believe it was the game against Norway that they wore it, or maybe another one. But I seem to remember that was obviously a big result
Mm.
for them. And I actually thought England's kit looked really good. I was sort of quite high on that one compared to a lot of people. I think it sort of lived up to the hype,
Mm.
with the big red numbers. I think that one, were the kit not so expensive, I would have I would have bought it. And I might, hopefully, if that goes on sale, I might look out for that one. But yeah, I like those ones. Yeah, and other kits, like I think Norway, obviously they
Mm.
had several good moments, and they were one of the most memorable teams in the tournament. Their kits looked good, and it was interesting. They actually wore all three kits, so they wore the home, the blackout kit, and the white kit. So that they were one of the few teams that did that. Cape Verde as well actually did that as well, and there's a few others who wore three kits. So and Mexico, that was another one. So it was fun to see a few teams get a full run out of the kits as well.
Mm.
But yeah, honestly, there were many more hits than misses, I think, and there were a few which actually, I mean, probably get onto this, I'm sure. A few which, kind of on reflection, perhaps I was a little bit too low on.
Yeah. We'll come on to that in just a second. I suppose for me, it probably is a Norway kit. I was quite high on
Mm,
it in our Europe episode. That I was looking forward to it, and it lived up to its billing, didn't it? And
it is.
the blackout kit, we mentioned it in last week's episode that it was top of my worst kits. It wasn't as egregious as I thought it was going to be, but as we discussed last week, blackout kits have had their moments. So
Mm,
let's move on to kits that we changed our mind about. I've got one that I really rated and I've completely swapped my mind about, and one that I
mm.
wasn't so keen on and I've become a fan of. But before we talk about my ones, Phil, was there any that you saw and went, oh, actually, that's a bit of a sleeper?
Yeah, it's really funny. Like, there's a whole category of kits which I slated, in our recordings. And actually, when I there was a key detail which I had completely missed at the time, and this is Puma's away shirts. Now, don't get me wrong, I still think Puma had a few misses amongst all their away shirts, but there were a number of them, particularly Senegal's, the
Mm.
white Senegalese shirt. And I saw not long after we recorded actually, that the actual shirts were effectively printed inside out, or the pattern was fully on the inside of the shirt, and so the effect was when it was reversed, you had this kind of washed out pattern. And I commented at the time, I said, it all looks a bit washed out. I don't really get it. And when I saw that, I kind of thought, okay, I still think the result could have been better had they gone for, the inside of the shirt. But it was quite a creative way to achieve the design. And I think it made me look at their away kits in a different light. And again, I don't think all the kits got worn. I don't think the Ivory Coast one ever got worn, which I slated in again in our rundowns. But yeah, like to use the Senegal shirt as an example, when I saw that into that, okay, that's kind of fun. Again, it's a bit of an odd end result, but actually, it's a creative way to go about it. So I would definitely say that one, and a smaller one as well. But I am. We've mentioned before how socks or shorts can really change a kit,
Hmm.
and seeing the Columbia home shirt, which I was a bit low on, or at least I wasn't really too fussed
Hmm.
about, but I really liked in one of the many combinations they had. I believe it was the white socks. The inside of the white socks was the Columbia flag, and when
Nice.
some of the players wore the socks were turned up or turned over, and it just completed the kit. You had the home shirt. I believe they wore both white and blue shorts at different points with the
Hmm.
shirt, but then with the white socks specifically turned inside out. Some people said they looked a bit like Brazil, but actually because of the flag, I thought, oh, that it's such a funny thing. But when I saw that, I was like, oh, I now like the shirt more because of the socks. So that was another one, which yeah, like I was kind of a bit, the shirt was fine, it was okay, but seeing it with the socks, I was like, okay, I actually like this one.
Yeah, it's interesting how a really small detail like that can have such a big difference. Just going back to the Inside Out Puma, I saw something similar as well, but I think I saw it was due to complying with FIFA's rules, and I can't remember
Mhm,
exactly off the top of my head what the rules were, but I want to say it's about the colours.
mhm.
Surely, if it's Inside Out, the colours are still there. Is that something that FIFA needs to look at about restrictions? And because we saw some incredible warm up kits that would have been phenomenal to see on the field as well. Do
Yeah,
FIFA need to relax the regulations to allow a bit more creative freedom? Do you think?
yeah, I think there's been a tension for a long time in the industry in that there are considerations around accessibility and how legible things like numbers are and names are, and a lot of the rules kind of in part help in those areas. So yeah, there are reasons that, for example, we don't see many striped striped shirts with stripes on the back. It's partly because of being able to read the numbers. Now, so there are different ways to get around that. Obviously, sometimes you've had examples. Well, historically, you'd even have kind of patches or whatever, big chunks that were like, you know, um, added on post design, post the shirt manufacturing. Then we kind of moved to an era where they would actually factor that in a bit more. We then had for a number of years, and this still happens occasionally, just completely plain backs, which is always a big shame. When you had a lovely pattern, whether it's stripes or no pattern. But then if that's just a plain back, it always looks a bit naff, and they still do that sometimes. But we're starting to see teams, or there's a bit more license to do maybe partial stripes or what have you. I think ultimately we're at the point now where we should be able to. Well, I would say there should be um, a kind of middle ground where yes, there needs to be a baseline. This is legible for the ref, for the people in the stadium, commentators, and obviously on TV. but we don't need to go back to the kind of, oh, let's just take the passing completely away. So I think I would like to see a kind of common sense approach, really, which is a lot to ask of FIFA. But rather than a kind of a blanket rule, and it's the same with like rules around kit clashes. 10 years ago or so, we had and even like the 2014 World Cup, actually, that FIFA were quite strict on kind of mono-colored kits and having a light and a dark team, and it led to some really like Spain wearing all red, and it just looks a bit weird. As in red shorts as well as the shirts. That kind of relaxed a bit, and ultimately, I think a lot of the teams look best when they don't have just one color. So someone like France, when they've got the white shorts and the red socks, it just looks better. Same with England. I don't like the all white look, which they were forced to use a few times. They look so much better with contrasting shorts. So I think for me, that's in an area where we can afford to have a little bit of a clash on the shorts or what have you. That I think is a good start, and then hopefully, again, from a kit, fanatics perspective, it's always better to have a little bit more of the actual shirt and less of the kind of, again, plain backs and all that nonsense. But you can tell I'm passionate about this stuff. Yeah, that's a couple of thoughts.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting if the Senegal kit, if the Ivory Coast kit, a lot of the other Puma kits we mentioned, if they were in higher upper rankings, if they were reversed and
Mm.
were allowed to be a bit more bold and out there. And yeah, it'd be interesting to have a chat down the line about kit clashes, because it's one of those things that it can frustrate. Like when you see like Chelsea, Man City, and they play both in blue, and you go, that surely that's a clash. But anyway, we'll leave that for another day. I mentioned that there was two kits that I sort of changed my mind on. One in a negative way, one in a positive way. I was quite keen on the South Korea home and away kit. I can't remember seeing too much of the away kit. They did play in it, but I don't remember seeing too much of it. They were casualties of the early exit in third place lottery. But the home kit was one that I really liked the pictures of, thought it looked really cool, and I watched their game and I was like, this kit looks completely different from all the pictures that we saw, because it seemed to have quite big panel and dark paneling compared to, so it was a red base, the sort of tiger inspired stripes that I think we mentioned, it could have been the mountains of South Korea as well. But when you actually saw it in the pit, under the arm and round the back, it was a really dark colour. It didn't really suit, in my opinion. So for me, I saw that and went, oh, I've really bigged this one up, and I'm not a fan of it anymore. So that's one that I saw and went, oh, right, I've swung one way. But for me, the big surprise kit that I really fell in love with was the Brazil home kit. I know you were a fan of it, but in our South America episode, I was I'm not too keen on. I wasn't too keen on either of them, but seeing that combination of Brazilian kit, I think the whole combo, and I grew to love the deep V collar that they had, and I thought it was an iconic Brazil kit. When you look back at it, it's unfortunate the results of this World Cup won't match that sort of kit, so it probably won't go down as an all-time great Brazilian kit because of what happened at this World Cup, and they did really, really struggle. But that was definitely a kit where I went, yeah, I got that wrong. Just on from picture to pitch, that was completely different. So yeah, for me, Brazil was the big surprise of this tournament.
Yeah, it's funny you say it, because I think yeah, like you say, I was quite high on it. There was something which I felt I wanted more in some way about it, but that's maybe more a case of kind of how much I was looking forward to it. But I'm happy that you came around, so to speak. I do think it's really fun to kind of like there are kits which, like, you remember for different reasons or what have you, and sometimes it's the performance, of course. Sometimes it's simply just like um someone like Haiti's kit, the
Mm,
more as time goes on, again, that was one which I really didn't like. But then, like, because of the whole story of having to change it,
yep.
and also they had albeit sparing a few, sparingly few moments. But Wilson Isidor's goal was one of the goals of
Mm,
the tournament, and so it's like, okay, I feel like that one is going to age well in my mind, even though I wasn't a big fan. And on the flip side, like I was quite high on Portugal's kit. That one just kind of fell flat in the end, or at least I again came away thinking, oh, I don't think I remember this one as much. But it is fun. It's fun to see that, and it goes to show that no matter what you think before, seeing the kit properly, it can all change. That's part of the fun of kits.
yeah, definitely, definitely, and it's been a real blast looking through this World Cup at some of the best kits on display from the different confederations. Phil, I've loved doing it with you. We're hoping to come back in a couple of weeks to have a bit more of these conversations about kit clashes and different colours and looking down at the Premier League and across Europe. So, Phil, for now, I'll say thank you very much and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Thanks, bud. Will do.